Where are you reading? What are you reading in your reading group? What topic are you reading from in your reading group?
We started off with Bhagavad Gita, Marathi, and then we went to Krishna.
Krishna book.
Yeah, now we are Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Uh-huh. Gora Purnim coming up. You know that one, right? Okay. Well, this is, while visiting here, I've been discussing from Krishna book, chapter 14. Chapter 14 is Brahma's prayers to Krishna when Brahma visited Vrindavan. A little familiar?
Yeah.
Oh, more than a little familiar. That was pretty strong, yeah. The other evening, we were with somebody's home, kind of, but actually from his childhood, he's been hearing from his mother and a Telugu-speaking person reading the Bhagavatam in Telugu from a Telugu commentator. So he was quite familiar with just being shy or humble or something. You're like, yeah.
I'm not too sure how much I really know, but yes.
Okay. That's kind of like all of us, different degrees, of course. Because the Krishna is unknowable. And how is it possible to know Krishna? The unknowable. Then how can you know the unknowable? One of my experiences in the early days of the Hare Krishna, I've been practicing full-time, living a life of full-time devotion to Krishna for 52 years. So when I was a little younger, one of my main activities was meeting the public and distributing books. And we knew exactly what people who were from an Indian background would say when we showed them. You know what they would say? I know all about Krishna. Variations on the theme of, I know all about Krishna, with a smile. It was like a polite, no thanks. It wasn't like, I know all about Krishna, let me see this about Krishna. Anyway, there's a lot of mystery. We were touching yesterday evening on some of the mystery of the unknowable, and the means of knowing the unknowable is the bhakti process, as opposed to the Gyan process. And Brahma is the most learned person in the universe. And he's attesting in these earlier verses that Krishna is not knowable by the Gyan process. And he goes into it a bit. Now he's speaking to Krishna in the circumstance, you know the circumstance? Here's the circumstance. Brahma is the creator, the firstborn living being. Before anything existed, he was born. And he became self-realized after 100 celestial years of tapa. His tapa was mantra meditation. He received mantra from I don't want to go too far into it, but the internal spiritual potency Saraswati, as opposed to his consort Saraswati, the demigoddess, because the demigoddess didn't even exist at that time. In fact, all that existed was darkness in all directions at that time. So he became self-realized. Lord Vishnu appeared before him after all this time, said, "You please me very much. Please request some benediction from me." So being very intelligent, he asked for several. And one of them that he asked for was protection from false ego, from thinking that I'm I am the creator of this universe. Because in the course of self-realization, he not only knew that he was the spirit soul, distinct from the body, but he also knew what his duty was with the body to build the universe that didn't exist yet, with the ingredients supplied by Vishnu. So Vishnu appeared before him. Please protect me from the false ego of doership, thinking, and I'm the creator of this universe. And then he asked several other questions. He asked questions. Please answer these questions essentially about the absolute truth. Now he was already well acquainted with the ocean of truth. He had received all the Vedas, and he had manifested the Vedas from his 4 mouths. Still, he asked these questions of Vishnu. Vishnu gave their answers. It's a very nice section of the 2nd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Then after some time, following the inspiration and the intelligence and the Shrishti Shakti, the creative potency of the Supreme Lord, he engineered not just a building or even a city, or he engineered the whole universe. And through the assistance of Prajapatis, he populated that universe. 1, 2. Many, many details, of course. And he does this every day. Well, he reconstructs the universe up to and including Swargaloka and below every day, because at every night of Brahma, there's a partial devastation. According to Vedic texts, that everything becomes very dry. There's a drought. And then there's fire at the bottom. Anantashesh, from his mouths comes fire. Lord Shiva does a dance and it inflames the fire. And everything burns to ashes. Then there's a downpour of rain, puts out the fire. And everything is dissolved in that flood that goes all the way up to and including the heavenly realm. So the 7 lower planets and the next 3 upper planets, and then the 4 topmost planetary systems, they're saved. They don't have to be rebuilt every day of Brahma. So it is night is of equal duration as his day. Well, this is Vedic understanding. And each morning, he gets up and rebuilds the universe, the lower part, and does it again each day for his whole life. And each day is a long duration. Each day is 1,000 yuga cycles, and each yuga cycle is 4,320,000 years times 1,000. That's one day. So during each of those days of Brahma, he knows that Krishna will appear. He knows Krishna because he received the mantra from Krishna's flute, one of his 2 mantras, and he was meditating on Krishna. Tene Brahma Hrida Adi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha. Bhagavatam teaches. Krishna from within his heart imparted knowledge of himself and his duty and everything. He didn't have to go to school. Didn't have to pass exams. Yay. But that became perfect in his self-realization process and was given knowledge of the Vedas and everything. So he knew that Krishna would come once each day during Manu number 7, because each of those 1,000 yuga cycles, there's 14 Manus. And Manu number 7, our present Manu, is Vaivasvata Manu, mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, where Krishna says to Arjuna in the first verse of chapter 4, long ago I instructed this same imperishable science, the Bhagavad Gita, to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan taught his son Manu. His son is Vivasvata Manu. Manu number 7. Manu taught Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku brought that knowledge to this earthly realm, and the Sun dynasty spread through Ayodhya and so forth. So Brahma knew that Krishna will appear during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu, and which of those 71 yuga cycles was yuga cycle number 28. So he came to pay a visit, to pay his respects to Krishna. And the occasion when he came, Krishna was in his childhood Leela, just 4 years old, taking care of calves with his friends. With many details, but Brahma witnessed Krishna giving liberation, Sayuja Mukti, to a demon. The demon was a big snake, Aghasura. Familiar? Yes. Okay, good. Okay, good. Yes, Aghasura? A little bit? Okay. Aghasura. Not a nice name. And what mother's going to call their son Agha? And then because he was in an Asura family, he got the additional name, Aghasura. So anyway, Krishna gave him liberation. He, Aghasura, was the brother of Putana. We heard this during his prayers. We're going to hear it again, I think, in this section. So there are 3, a sister and 2 brothers, all got liberation. Whew. And all 3 of them had the intention to kill Krishna, and Krishna gave them liberation. Pretty amazing. Brahma saw that. Krishna gave liberation to Aghasura and killed this giant creature. And then right after that, it was time for lunch, so the boys went to have lunch. It was noon. So they went and sat down to have lunch. And Brahma became inquisitive. He wondered, how powerful is this little boy? Is there a limit to his power? Which is okay, being inquisitive is good. But then he did something that wasn't good. He decided to challenge Krishna. I'm going to match my mystic power against his mystic power and see who wins. Well, guess who wins? Krishna won. So in short, there's details, but with his mystic power, he scooped up all the calves, a large number of calves, put them in a cave. The cowherd boys having the lunch noticed the calves were missing. We better go find the calves. Our livelihood, our life is protecting the calves. Krishna said, don't worry, I'll find them. You just continue lunch. And he got up. He's omniscient, but it was a Leela, so he couldn't find the calves. While he was looking for the calves here and there, Brahma again used his mystic power to scoop up all the cowherd boys and put them in a cave. Then he wanted to go back and see what's Krishna going to do. Maybe he's going to cry. Who knows? Maybe he'll call out to me, oh, Brahma, help me find my cowherd boys. Let's see what Krishna is going to do. So what did Krishna do? He manifested himself. Krishna manifested himself in exact likenesses of every one of the cowherd boys, so much so that Brahma didn't recognize, and even their mothers didn't recognize, because there's a sequel to this story, how Krishna moved the time energy, because all energies are under his direction, including time energy. So for 1 year, Krishna went back to Vrindavan village, looking exactly like each one of the cowherd boys. And the reason for that was he was reciprocating with the love of their mothers. The mothers had love for their boys, and they had even greater love for Krishna, which is very unusual, most unusual. Mothers may have a nice affection for some of their sons' friends, but they're not going to love their sons' friends more than their own son. And all of them had that love. They wanted Krishna as their son. So he fulfilled their desire. He became their son for a whole year. And they didn't even know it. They thought it was their son. And the cows wanted to experience having to feed Krishna directly their milk, so Krishna became calves. Exact likeness of each of the calves. A very special Leela for 1 year. And when the Leela came to a close, Brahma returned, because part of the differential of time is the time on the higher planets compared to the time that passes on the lower planets. Theirs is a short time, ours is a much more expanded time. Same for like lower living entities with life forms that are in the evolutionary scale lower than the human form. Like, say an insect. They're 100 years and maybe 3 hours or 3 days or something like that. And for us, our 6 months within demigod time is 1 day. And for Brahma, a few moments is a whole year. And time is relative. In other words, in any case, Krishna worked it out with his energies under his full control, that Brahma returned after his prayers, and Krishna went back and continued having lunch with the cowherd boys. Because by that time, he had withdrawn his own manifestation as each of the cowherd boys, and by his Yogamaya potency, the cowherd boys, who had been away from home for a whole year, check this out, they didn't eat anything, they didn't sleep, they didn't even notice the passage of time. What little boys are going to be like that? But Yogamaya potency enabled them to sit down somehow. And when Krishna returned, it was as if just a moment had passed from their Yogamaya sense of passage of time. And they said, "Oh, Krishna, you're so attached to us, you can't be away from us for even a short time. Come sit down, let's finish lunch." And their lunch was still there, and it hadn't spoiled after 1 year. It was pretty transcendental. That's the pastime. So when Brahma offered, there's things that happened. Brahma offered his prayers to Krishna, having seen the display of not only each of the cowherd boys, which he then understood, each one is Krishna, then each of the forms of the cowherd boys simultaneously manifested forms of Narayan. And each one of the forms of Narayan was surrounded by all of the potencies of Narayan, which are unlimited, and singing his praises and worshiping him. And there's a list of those potencies, with etc. and so forth, and many, many, many others. And they were singing his praises like a big concert. It must have been really loud. And then, poof, they all disappeared, just like that. Brahma offered prayers, recognizing, no way I could understand this by my knowledge power, by Gyan power. It's only possible because you revealed it to me. And my approach to you as your loving servant was the qualification. So that, there's a lot of discussion about how to know the unknowable. not by Gyan, but by Bhakti. There's a lot of that discussion. There's an understanding that the potencies of the Supreme are without limit, because that was what his question was. Now he has this realization. No comparison between my and his. And yesterday evening, we heard the final prayers that come at 9 through 12. This is summarizing 1 through 8. 9 through 12 was his apology. And his apology was again restating his tininess in comparison to the unlimited. And he said something, I used a nice metaphor. Within you, he already saw it, within you is everything. Say it negatively. There isn't something that exists that's outside of Krishna. Say it positively. Everything that exists is within Krishna. And he may manifest it, and then he may withdraw it. But everything is his. And it's all within him. So then he gave this nice metaphor. I'm also within you. Just like a child was in the abdomen of mother, and the child may kick, the mother doesn't complain. So I made this big mistake. But don't treat me like a little infant. One of the living entities that's within you. And please extend your mercy and compassion to me by forgiving me. So that's where we ended up yesterday. And now we're going to go on to the next section. Here's a verse from Canto 3, Chapter 9, where Brahma, in the process of creation, is offering this prayer to Vishnu. I'll just read it. Oh, my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed. And you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. This is one of the ways of saying that Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. And each person is a little different. What's in their heart is a little different. And Krishna knows what's in their heart because he's within their heart. And he reciprocates with their love by manifesting himself according to their love. Or, in the language of Bhagavad Gita, Yayatam mam prapadyante tangstataiva bhajamyaham. Prapadyante means surrender. Prapadyante. And as they prapadyante, as they surrender unto me, bhajamyaham, and they engage in my service, I reciprocate accordingly. All living entities. So now we're ready for, and so Brahma has seen what he saw. We've had some discussions about what Mother Jasoda saw inside Krishna. And Brahma saw what he saw by what's inside Krishna coming outside Krishna, then being withdrawn. Arjuna saw what he saw, the universal form being manifest by Krishna, then withdrawn by Krishna. So each person sees according to their regard for Krishna, and Krishna knows that he's that kind of loving person. Now we're ready for the next series of verses. Lord Brahma has taken full shelter of the bhakti process, abandoning speculative attempts to know the unlimited. Then he offered apologies. After offering apologies to Krishna, Lord Brahma now asserts his realization that Krishna is the original Narayana. Now you started reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Okay, there's a section in Chaitanya Charitamrita where these verses are discussed. And in these verses that are coming up, Brahma who's the original living being born in this universe, is addressing a 4-year-old boy that you're Narayan. And Krishna's like, what? Consider what you're saying. You're the most intelligent, and you're the original person, and I'm only 4 years old. Why are you speaking like this? And so he's going to assert his understanding that Krishna is Narayan. Now, when this term Narayan is used, depending upon context, it can have different meanings. Commonly, the primary meaning of Narayana is the Lord of Vaikuntha, Lakshmi Narayana. However, depending upon context, it can mean some of the expansions of Narayana. It's also Narayana. The Vishnu forms that deal with the material world, Narayana of Vaikuntha doesn't, but his expansions deal with Prakriti, the affairs of creation, manifesting the universes, entering within each universe, entering within every atom of the universe. 3 different Vishnu forms or Purusha avatars. So you'll see with that little prelude, Brahma uses this term Narayana in different contexts, or to have different meanings because of context. So here we go with text 13. My dear Lord, Krishna, it is said that when the 3 planetary systems are merged into the water at the time of dissolution, your plenary portion, Narayana, lies down on the water. Now, that's not Narayana of Vaikuntha. He doesn't lie down in the water at the time of dissolution, but his expansion does. Gradually, a lotus flower grows from his navel. So now we know which of the Vishnu forms that is. Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So it's not wrong. It's perfectly okay to refer to Garbhodakshay Vishnu as Narayana because he's an expansion of Narayana. And Brahma takes birth upon that lotus flower. Certainly these words are not false. Thus am I not born from you. Now Krishna is not Narayana from Vaikuntha, but he already manifested so many Narayana forms from his own expansions, looking just like the cowherd boys. So Narayan is his expansion. Narayan's expansion is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Since I come from Garbhodakshay Vishnu, are you not my father? Am I not born from you? Very reasonable. Now, I'm not going to go through the detail, but your reading group probably will at some point if you keep going, because this is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in depth. O Lord of Lords, you are the seer of all creation. You are indeed everyone's dearest life. Are you not therefore my father Narayana? We'll see the explanation of this next, taken from Chaitanya Charitamrita, a simpler form. Narayana refers to one whose abode is in the water, born from Nara, or Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And that Narayana is your plenary expansion. All your plenary portions are transcendental. They are absolute and are not creations of Maya. Now, there's many things within. That's why there's pages and pages and pages in Chaitanya Charitamrita explaining this. But this is just the verse. The forms of the Vishnu avatars, Purusha avatars, they're transcendental. They're not material. lying on the Garbhodak ocean or the causal ocean. The ocean is not material. Their bodies are not material. Anantashesh, whom they're lying upon, is not material. And we're not accustomed to things that aren't material. But Brahma knows the difference between things that are material because he just made a universe out of material elements that were supplied by Vishnu. And there's this common saying, as above, so below. As above, so below. You've heard that one before. As above, so below. It's I found out from visiting China, they have that saying too. I was surprised. As above, so below. So what's existing in the spiritual world has its reflection in this world. The variety we find in this world has its spiritual counterpart. So he's built the universe made of the illusory energy, but the form of Vishnu, the form of Krishna, and his abode and his paraphernalia and everything is not material. There's nothing material about it. He's asserting that. And it's an important teaching. He's giving truths about transcendence just in his prayers. Loka Shakshi means the seer of all creation. Here's a nice painting of the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj, right? You remember? You're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Here's a painting of the author writing Chaitanya Charitamrita in Vrindavan. And there are three reasons of logic. I'll just present them quickly. They're expanded in detail by Krishnadas. Why this little 4-year-old boy is Narayana, who is his father, Brahma's father, or Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Krishna is the ayana, or refuge, of all Naras. Therefore, it's Narayana. That's pretty simple. Next, there's 3. Here's number 2. Krishna is the source of the Purusha avatars, semicolon. He protects and invests potency in the Purushas, who in turn are the shelter of all living beings. So Krishna is the shelter of the shelter, that's the first one, and then his expansion is the shelter. And the third, Krishna oversees the wandering, or ayana, of all living beings. So he's Narayana. Upadrashta Anumantacha, chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita. He says, Upadrashta, he oversees, Upadrashta, and Anumanta, he permits. And his form is super soul within the heart. So he oversees the wanderings, or the ayana, of all living beings. So he's Narayana. That says Paramatma. He's a form of Narayana. The Krishna's expansion is the form of Paramatma. Anyway, all 3 are reasons, logical, scriptural, and reasoned conclusions that he's asserting to this 4-year-old boy, you're my father. Here's verse 15. We're going to be hearing it in these narration. You'll recognize we're going to have a recording of Prema Tarangani's voice. It's good. With narrating about 15 verses coming up. My dear Lord, if your transcendental body, which shelters the entire universe, is actually lying upon the water, then why were you not seen by me when I searched for you? And what that means is, when Brahma was born from the lotus flower, which had a lotus stem, which appeared from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and he was searching for his source, and he climbed down the stem and down and down and down and down, and he couldn't find the end of that stem. And he didn't see Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So why he didn't see Garbhodaksha Vishnu before? And the answer is, by direct sense perception, it's not possible. By logic and reason, it's not possible. So how is it possible? By bhakti, by revelation, it was possible. And why, though I could not envision you properly within my heart, you suddenly revealed yourself? I mentioned that already from Canto 2, Chapter 9. Vishnu revealed himself. So he's pondering and asking Krishna for answers to things that puzzle him. Now let's see if technology is going to cooperate. And if not, we'll have to figure something out. There's supposed to be sound. It's not working. Okay, I'm going to have to do this. Normally I have technology people that know how to make the sound thing work. Let me try this. Jabra speaker.
Lord Brahma attempts to express the ramifications of the opulence that he has seen Krishna display. He prays to Krishna, "O Lord, I previously was unable to either understand or see you due to the coverings of your own Maya, your illusory energy. But you are the controller of that Maya, and that was proved by Mother Yashoda's seeing the universe within your abdomen. Now, at the present, that universe is externally manifest as your inconceivable energy, and it is therefore all that I perceive. Today, by your manifesting all the cows, cowherd boys, and Vishnu forms who are being worshipped by all living entities, you've demonstrated that the entire creation is your inconceivable potency. And now, I'm seeing before me the original form of the unlimited, supreme, absolute truth. To the ignorant, you seem to be of this material world, although it is you who appears as Brahma, the creator, who appears as Vishnu, the maintainer, and as Shiva, the destroyer. To demonstrate that you, the absolute truth, is an unlimited transcendental person, you descend within the universe as avatars, and you take birth among the demigods, sages, humans, animals, and the aquatics. As an avatar, you then, by your spiritual potency, perform your innumerable, inconceivable, mysterious pastimes. Due to you, this entire universe, which, like a dream, is by nature unreal, nevertheless appears real. And thus, it covers one's consciousness and assails one with repeated miseries. This universe appears real because it is manifested by the potency of illusion emanating from you, whose unlimited transcendental forms are full of eternal happiness and knowledge. You are the one Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the absolute truth, self-manifesting, endless and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival, and free from all material designations. Your happiness cannot be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are the indestructible nectar of immortality. By the grace of his spiritual master, a jnani can mix bhakti with his jnana. He will then be able to see you as the soul of all souls. He will be able to see you as the super soul of his own self. This vision will allow him to cross the ocean of material existence. For one who has thus realized you, the illusory energy at once subsides, for he is free of the false vision of perceiving anything as separate from you. Seeing you with this vision of knowledge and remaining in knowledge of you, devoid of the false perceptions that are the cause of the existence of the material world, his ignorance and illusion cease. Therefore, through knowledge of you and knowledge of himself as your eternal servant, neither liberation nor bondage have meaning for him, just as day and night have no meaning for one present on the sun planet. How foolish are the jnanis! How foolish are the mayavadis! They are fools because they consider your form as a manifestation of illusion. How foolish are the conditioned souls! Regardless of how intelligent they think themselves as being, they all perceive themselves as their bodies, and they thus fail to see their self as part of you. They're all fools because they reject you, and in so doing, they search for the Supreme Soul outside of your Supreme Personality. How foolish are all of these so-called learned men. O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees who have added bhakti to their jnana seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake? My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years.
So that was easy. That was 15 verses in a short time and very sweetly presented. Brahma is the head of our disciplic succession. According to Padma Purana, there are 4, and they're still existent, disciplic successions. One from the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, or the Sri Sampradaya. From the 4 Kumaras, the Kumara Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and Brahma Sampradaya. So for us, we're in the Brahma Sampradaya, and his words are very important. So I don't mind going over this many, many times because he's the head of our Sampradaya, and it's wonderful to hear how he expresses his appreciation of Krishna, which was awarded to him because of his devotion to Krishna, although the circumstance was a little uncomfortable, a little inappropriate. How can someone who's so elevated do something that's inappropriate? Well, there's 2 main ways. One is Krishna induces him to do something inappropriate, like Arjuna. Arjuna became covered by Krishna inducing him from within to become covered and forget what he knows, and then start asking questions about what he should know for our benefit. So Brahma is speaking all these prayers for our benefit. One way of understanding is Super Soul within Brahma's heart induced him to do like that. And another possibility, if that may be appropriate for Brahma, what about someone that's not at Brahma's level of elevation? And if that happens, there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita that teaches, even if a great soul does something that's bad, the word in the verse, durachar, bad behavior. In fact, it has an adjective or prefix, su durachar. Apichet, even if su durachar, something very bad is done by an elevated person. Yet, on the other side of the pan scale is they're always engaged, always engaged. Sadur eva samanta, always engaged in my devotional service. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Ananya, undivided devotion. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Sadur eva. So Krishna says, I consider that person to be sadhu, and you should also. And in the next verse, Krishna says, I correct that person myself. I personally get involved and correct that situation from within and from without. So sometimes, in this case, my understanding is Krishna induced Brahma to do this thing that he did, steal the calves and cowherd boys, etc. So Krishna could have a pastime of manifesting as calves and cowherd boys to fulfill the desires of the residents of Vrindavan. Brahma was the instrument, and then Brahma got to offer nice prayers for our edification. Because the cowherd boys and calves didn't. The mothers and fathers didn't. They were just absorbed in their loving dealings with Krishna. So Brahma has another function for us, that's to give teachings. So he's giving teachings through these prayers. Very nice teachings. And we're going to finish the rest of the prayers tomorrow evening. It goes up to verse number 40. And we're almost there. So let's see if there's some discussion here. Any questions or comments or anything? Yeah. Huh.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have two questions. My first question is, why is Shiva eternal while Brahma had limited days to live?
Well, both Shiva and Brahma are of this world. Now, it's a little complicated. The living entity within the body of Brahma is eternal. The soul of Brahma is eternal. The body is temporary. And Vishnu doesn't have a material body. And then comes, so he is eternal. It says manifesting and not manifesting. Lord Shiva is in a third tattva. You know the meaning tattva? Jiva tattva, Vishnu tattva, and in between is Shiva tattva. Tattva means truth or reality about something, is the tattva of that something. Shakti tattva. Shiva tattva is mysterious. It's not easy to understand. It's neither this nor that. But he Lord Shiva, when the universe is annihilated, Lord Shiva is not continuing to be Lord Shiva in the manifest form. So what is he doing? He's situated in Shiva Tattva, and he manifests in a very remarkable way. You know how he manifested, right? He manifested from the forehead or the brow of Brahma.
My second question is, what will happen when Brahma dies? Like the body dies.
What happens is cosmic annihilation. Dissolution of the universe, because he built it. But what not only he gets old, like 100 years old in his time, when that time comes, here's what Vishnu does. He pulls the plug. And when he pulls the plug, that's my phrase, he withdraws the time energy. Because to have creation, you have to have time energy. So he withdraws, or Rama Devi on his behalf withdraws that time energy. And when the time energy is withdrawn, then the whole cosmic manifestation collapses. You've seen at Christmas time, people have these, Santa Claus and different things in their front yard, and they're balloon. And then what happens in the morning? They pull the plug. And what do you see? You just see a pile of plastic piled up in the front lawn. Then at night they pump it up again, and then they pull the plug. So Vishnu pulls the plug, and the extending is the time energy, and he withdraws the time energy. And then everything collapses upon itself. The elements that unfolded then go back to their subtle state. The subtle state is pradhan. What pradhan is the totality of the material energy in its subtle state, undifferentiated. Just waiting for the next creation. And then the creation happens in a cyclical fashion. The glance of Mahavishnu, the living entities in time energy are sent. And then things start to happen again. And then when the time is over, time energy is withdrawn. And it collapses. So that's what happens at the end of Brahma's day.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I used to wonder why there's so much of emphasis on creation in our literature, and why, because it is like kind of explaining nuclear physics to an end. It's so complex, and why there's so much emphasis on that. But right
amongst
now,
the scientists, or amongst the scriptural texts?
The scriptural texts. So there is a little bit of understanding or appreciation right now for two things specifically in relation to creation. One is that the Lord doesn't do creation out of duty. It's the whole creation is a manifestation of His compassion for the living entities.
Yes.
That's one. And the second, when I hear about creation, is something that comes to the heart is humility. What am I in this?
Yes.
So those are the two things that come up when I hear about creation. But I just wanted to hear from you, Guru Maharaj, if there are other reasons or other things that we should be kind of receptive to when we are hearing such elevated topics.
Well, sure. For those who are inquisitive, to be inquisitive is a sign of life. And for those who are inquisitive, it's a natural question for inquisitive people. Those who aren't inquisitive don't ask, but those who are inquisitive ask, who am I? Where did I come from? And what's the purpose of all this? Is there a purpose for all this? And for those that are inquisitive, there's answers. Within the Vedic texts, there's Mahapuranas and there's Puranas. There's 18 Mahapuranas. And the Mahapuranas have 10 subject matters. 2 of those 10 are the creation of Vishnu and the subcreation of Brahma. And there's 8 more. Because curious people, inquisitive people want to know, where did I come from? What's going on here? Is there a purpose to all this? It seems chaotic. And what's my duty while I'm here? That helps define duty. The duty is making a connection with the source. So theism says God's the source. Oh, really? That's the theists stand up to the scientist who says, show me the evidence. I've heard scientists say like that. Where's the evidence? Because I believe my senses. If I can't perceive it, then I don't believe it. Where's the evidence? So there's different kinds of evidence where everything comes from than sense perception. Because, so there's the whole explanation. Sense perception is imperfect. And extensions of the senses, made by the senses, like telescopes and things, and microscopes and things, it's also made by the senses, which are imperfect, so they're also more or less imperfect. So then how do you get the answers to those questions if it's not by sense perception? Well, you can reason and logic, and that's faulty also. So what's left? And that what's left is that from which there's the source of everything discloses what the source of everything is and how everything comes into being. It's not in detail in Bhagavad Gita, but it's indicated very clearly. Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, the first 7 verses, Krishna addresses this topic. Where did everything come from? And he first states, since that which is the source of everything, including yourself, existed before your existence, you can't know. Great sages, this and that, demigods, the most learned persons, they can't know because it existed before they existed. So is there a way to know? Yes, there's a way to know by disclosure. from that which existed before you existed, then you can know. That requires faith. But sense perception requires faith too. And reason and logic require, and life exists resting upon faith. So there's some faith, and then Krishna discloses. For those who are faithful, they can have an understanding. Now, supposing somebody's not inquisitive, they're just happy being happy, doing the things that they like to do and offering them to Krishna, then that's not wrong. But there are those that are inquisitive, so the explanation is there. And there is an explanation. Intelligence is meant to guide our mind, and our mind is meant to guide our senses, and our senses are meant to interact with gross material objects or subtle material objects like sound, etc., resting upon intelligence. So there's intelligence to understand how to move through matter. And if you understand the source of everything is the Supreme, then you serve the Supreme because everything is from that Supreme. Oh, is it so? Please explain how it is so. How does the effect connect with the cause? And how can then I can connect the effect with the cause? That understanding is meant for the wise or the Brahmins. So it's there. How to connect. But that connection, understanding doesn't come by Gyan process. This is now beyond your question, but in addition to your question, it comes through the Bhakti process. So all of this can be very mind-boggling to a person who's simple-minded. And I've heard that many times. This is mind-boggling, too complicated. It's not that if you don't understand all of this, you won't return to the spiritual world. You have to pass an exam on all the complicated. Not like that. But as you hear it further and further and further, then in course of time, it becomes, oh, this is how this puzzle piece fits together with that puzzle piece, fits together with that puzzle piece, and it makes the big picture. But when you have all these different puzzle pieces, it's perplexing. And I want to go do something else. It's too perplexing. I don't want to sit here and put the puzzle pieces together. But just by hearing gradually, this is how this fits with that. So your question was, why is there such emphasis? And you mentioned two reasons that resonate with you. Are there additional reasons? Those are some of them.
I was appreciating how Lord Brahma was receiving the revelation, also reciprocating to Krishna. He was expressing gratitude. Mm-hmm. He was expressing his humility, mm-hmm. and also he was expressing a desire to be in relationship with that personality, with Krishna. So when I am practicing bhakti, also Krishna gives some kind of a revelation. So in addition to these three, should I also be focusing on other aspects on how to reciprocate to that, whatever be the revelation that Krishna shows in that stage
Well,
of...
each of us are different. How Krishna reciprocated with Uddhava, for example, is different than how he reciprocated with Brahma. And you're not Brahma or Uddhava, so it's going to be different with you. And since he's the head of our sampradaya, he's giving some indicators, and through him, Krishna's giving some indicators for us. However, it's not that you need a formula. You need a relationship. I mean, you or each of us. We can pay attention to things that strike us. And, part of the difficulty is we get distracted and we lose focus on what those things are. And that's why we need to hear again and again and again. So my response to your question, are there additional items besides those three? And my response is it's personality specific. They're important because he's the head of our sampradaya. So giving attention to those because he's giving attention to those according to your nature, which is different than Brahma's, is fine. And as your relationship becomes more secure, you'll come to realize there are some other important things because of that relationship or connection with that relationship.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I think it might be related to Mataji's question. So when I hear about very exalted persons, exalted devotees speak, like, how can I know Lord's transcendental nature and all, maybe because of their humility and humble mood. So yeah, it occurs to me what is the hope that in my position, what do I put that effort for? So yeah, it feels like that I should do it, that I want to learn. But when I hear about all those
their
verses,
humility makes you feel discouraged.
not discouraged, maybe what I'm as
What's the hope for me?
Yeah, hope
well, that's
for me.
discouraged.
Yeah.
What's the difference between what's the hope for me and discouraged?
I'm not completely discouraged, but what is my path is
Okay. Okay.
in which mood that I should go forward.
Keep it simple. Faith. Something strikes you. Whatever it is today that strikes you, that inspires you, you do that with faith. And not likely this lifetime or any lifetime I'm going to be at Brahma's level. So I don't have to feel small because he's great. It's just, he's great, so you appreciate his greatness. And then you do a little inventory of your situation, self-honesty. This is my situation. Self-appraisal. And you come up with humility, which is a good, it's not a negative, it's a positive. Or saying the same thing differently. When you hold on to false ego, then you think self-importance. And when you're letting go of false ego, it doesn't feel self-importance anymore. It's humility. And that's good. Then from humility comes enthusiasm. Not discouragement. Or it's too far. But enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is, take a look at the resources that you now have in your life. And it's a long list. And all of those resources are nourishing that enthusiasm. There's stimulations for that enthusiasm to go forward, take another step, take another step. A doable step. And that's where you go. You go doable steps towards what's natural for you, in the deeper sense of what's natural for you. Being connected to Krishna. You wouldn't be able to, from the time that you started engaging yourself seriously, sincerely and seriously in the bhakti process, you didn't have all these resources. You had what you had, and Krishna was being kind to you, and now you have so many additional resources. So count your blessings and enthusiastically connect with those resources to your capacity. Now you're back to the humble, but I'm so small, I'm so insignificant, I'm so whatever, this and that. Great. Remain humble. Don't be in false ego, thinking otherwise. And Krishna is very kind. He's given all these resources. Let me stay close to those resources. In simple. When it's cold, you stand near a fire, you get warm. That's what you do, to your capacity. Don't jump in the fire, but stand near the fire, you get warm when it's cold. So a person who's small and, not so elevated and whatever are the, acknowledgments of humility. Let me say in close association of those personalities and those resources that give me strength and clarity and further purity. Further help me realize how far I am from the goal. More humility, please. So that's not discouraging. It's enlivening. I'm reaching the goal compared to where I was before. And now let me go further in doable steps towards the goal. That's the enthusiasm part. The enthusiasm is needed. Utsahan. Right? Nectar of instruction. How about our hosts and hostess? Anything?
Maharaj, my question is probably very related to the previous question, and I really wanted to get your guidance. How to keep faith when pulled in so many directions? How to keep faith? That's my question.
Simple. Association with those that have faith. It's like standing near a fire when you want to get warm. You associate with those who have faith, and it's not like you borrow from their faith, but their faith invigorates your natural tendency. And when you're doing that, ask questions. Ask questions like this one. And it's not like there's a right or wrong answer or right or wrong question, but the inquisitiveness is good. And then there's a resource, sadhu, sangha, and that resource can help give you clarity. There's several. That was but top of the list is that one. A second one, very common sense. When you act in knowledge, it increases faith. So make sure you're getting knowledge from the proper source, and then apply it, and something happens. An example for me is Ayurvedic medicine. Without the long story, I had a period of time in my life where I thought my lights were going out. So I tried to let me go visit 4 Ayurvedic clinics where people were saying that, these are good places. And I spent time at each one of those 4 places. And I felt most confidence in one. So nothing happened yet. I was still in the very weak condition. And as I started the process, I felt something. When you act in knowledge, you feel something. And when you feel something, it increases your faith. And so let me go back to that doctor and get a little better than, and then get strong. And so you need the right source, but where there's knowledge, and when you act in knowledge, a realization comes. And that realization nourishes faith. So acting in knowledge nourishes faith. It may take some time, so that's another quality is patience. Acting in knowledge increases faith. A third is kind of related to sadhusanga, but just by hearing. That's kind of what we heard Brahma say. By the hearing, well, it's from one of the earlier prayers, but by the hearing process, 2 things happen: cleansing and awakening. When the source is good source of spiritual sound vibration, there's some cleansing. Unwanted things become cleansed by the hearing process. And that which is innate within becomes awakened. But it's not awakened because it's covered by unwanted things, anarthas, unwanted things. And as those unwanted things become cleared, then the life can sprout. And that with life, that's where there's faith.
Thank you so much, Maharaji. I just wanted to thank you for visiting us. We feel like we are really blessed. So with Krishna's mercy, we got this opportunity to have you here, meet all these devotees. So I feel like these days have been distracted by, I wanted to be in that bhakti path ever since I came in contact with Prema Tarangini Mataji. It's been 1 year. But at certain times I feel like, I'm in that, I'm just, slowly starting my path towards Krishna, but then, getting distracted by a lot of other materialistic things or some family issues. So then again, I feel like I'm coming back and then going back again. So I just I've been praying Krishna that, please help me to continue, in this path, and then hopefully one day in one life, maybe next several lives, I'll reach to all these, devotees who've been like very seniors. They've been in with Krishna consciousness for so many years, and I hope I'll continue.
Well, we'll be with you. You can continue with us. We'll stay with you. Prabhupada had a way of making things like you're just described very simple. And it's similar to your husband's question. He said, Prabhupada said, just like a child innately has walking capacity. And it may take some time before they start walking. There's a general time when little children start crawling and start walking. But when they start walking, it takes a while. They, mother and father hold their hand or both hands, and they take a step, and they tumble. And they may cry, but they get up again, and just by practice and practice, and because the walking capacity is innate, it'll come out. Therefore, just continue, and it may be shorter, maybe longer, just like some children can learn to walk more quickly than others, but the walking capacity is there, it'll come out. Unless they're paralyzed, but the walking capacity will come out. So same, the spiritual propensity that you have a desire for, and the fact that you get distracted. Hey, that's par for the course. You're not a perfect person yet. You're a normal person, so nothing wrong with being a normal person. But just continue practice and practice and practice. And then these two things, the cleansing and the awakening. And when the awakening comes, it becomes enthusiasm. Spontaneous. It may take, for spontaneous, may take a while. It's okay. Walking capacity, eventually little children start running around. You can't hold them down. Natural. So allow nature to take, the spiritual nature to take its course, to stay connected with one who, Krishna says, one who strives by right means is assured of success. This is this acting and knowledge theme. One who strives by right means is assured of success. You stay in good association. Don't worry. Sometimes you'll tumble. That's okay. Sometimes you get distracted. That's okay. No one's got a meter hooked up to you saying pass, fail, or something like that. Just stay with it. Abhyasa. Yoga yuktena chetasananyagamino. Just continue to practice to your capacity. Be honest. And be enthusiastic to go, keep going, step by step, in good association. And if you tumble, someone will be there to extend a hand and say, here's my hand. No problem. Okay. One more? Online. Okay.
This question is from Chinmay Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Krishna, the self-satisfied person.
Krishna does what?
Krishna, the self-satisfied Supreme Person,
Okay.
is at play or lila with himself and his creation in various ways.
Yes.
Is he bewildering Brahma justifiable in this way?
Just to do what?
Justifiable in this way.
Oh, why not? I mean, why such a question? Brahma is benefiting from all of this. Brahma's love has got a big spike. And Brahma's getting a chance to give lessons that we're hearing so many 5,000 years later and benefiting from. So that's a nice service. So he's being benefited, he's benefiting others. Fantastic. More than justified. Fantastic. Next.
Another question from Chinmay Prabhu. Krishna alluring Lord Shiva as Mohini and confusing Lord Brahma as a unintelligent cowherd. The Supreme Person's unchecked supreme independence is fearful to a soul like me.
Is what?
Please guide me.
He's what?
The Supreme Person's unchecked supreme independence
Unchecked supreme independence
is fearful to a soul like me.
is fearful. So what would you prefer?
He's saying, please guide me.
Oh, well, associate with those that are omniscient. Associate with those who can give you perfect knowledge. Each of us, by nature, in different ways, we want to know things. So the best way to know things is from one who knows things perfectly. Like Prabhupada's words. If you want perfect knowledge, you have to go to a perfect person. You want imperfect knowledge, no problem. You go to an imperfect person, you get imperfect knowledge. So if you want perfect knowledge, go to a perfect person. So don't be intimidated by getting perfect knowledge. Be grateful. Leave behind the misconception that imperfect knowledge is better. Go for the conception and the pursuit in your life of knowledge that's not flawed. It'll take you out of the struggle of material existence. That knowledge I want. Don't be afraid. Unless you're too much tightly clinging on to the sources of misery. We don't like misery, but we're attached to the sources. So let go. That's the advice. Go beyond misery and the sources of misery with perfect knowledge from the perfect person. That's my advice.
Thank you, Maharaj. There are 3 questions from Amara Mataji. My understanding was nothing material comes from Krishna. Lord Garbhodaksha Vishnu has a spiritual body. Then how Brahma's material body come from him?
Because we say material in a certain context. Material means, it has different meanings. One of the meanings, I just heard in the lecture Prabhupada was explaining, matter is not conscious, whereas spirit is conscious. So we say material in that it's not conscious. It's material in the sense that also that it's temporary, whereas spirit is eternal. The forms of matter are temporary, and therefore we say material. And Krishna has such energy. You know from chapter 7 Bhagavad Gita. There's para and there's apara, prakriti. And matter is in the apara prakriti position. Next.
We hear that Brahma is a post.
Brahma is?
A post. Is it correct?
A post, yes.
Yeah. Is it correct?
Yes, correct. That means a jiva occupies the post. Each universe has a Brahma, and each Brahma is a post, and the post, generally speaking, is a jiva. Very qualified jiva. Next.
How is this a post when we know that in one universe Brahma comes from the navel of a Lord Vishnu?
I don't understand the question. Why is it a problem that he comes from the navel of Mahavishnu? Within the body, within the abdomen of Mahavishnu, we read, all the living, one universe worth of living entities are there. And Brahma is one of those living entities from the abdomen of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And he appears first. So it's not I don't see any contradiction or conflict. Next. That's it. Okay, Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, Govinda.